Hello and welcome to my channel, The Jellyfish Journals. My name is Susie, and before we roll into my theme for May of 2025 in my reading journal, I thought I would show you the supplies I plan to use and where I got them from, so that way if you are interested in something similar to this, you are able to dive right in. So I did mention that I am planning to only use ephemera and fussy cut kits in my reading journal this year. And as I was digging through, I found a really cool set with a lot of Chinese themed ephemera and Chinese themed icons. And so this kit is from, Junk Journal Craftery. And they're just really pretty reds and oranges and like this smoky gray blue color. It is just a fussy cut kit, but I liked the cats and all the lanterns. There's a lot of tassels and things. I liked all the pottery. Some of them had this bluish, this like beigeish background on them, but I will be trimming them out, so that's not going to matter. And true to form, I have already gotten excited and started planning things out before I thought to do this video. So you are going to see that some things have been cut out already, but rest assured you'll probably see them in the layout. But lots and lots of different pages that you can get in here. I think right now this kit, let's see, checking in. So right now this kit is available for about $2. It says the sale ends in 21 hours, but my experience on Etsy is a lot of times these sales continue on. But there are more than 60 elements. There is some greenery. I'm not going to be leaning into the green at all. And then just here's some more pieces that, like I said, I did start trimming because I got a little excited. So I'm planning to incorporate a lot of this. And what really inspired this was last year in my third grade class, when I started thinking all this stuff through, I had a student in my class who was fully Chinese, really did not speak any English at all. And he was so proud of his country and so proud of his culture. And you could tell because of the things that he would draw. Red was his favorite color. He wanted red everything all the time. And I just thought there was something really cool about that. And so my hope is, I am not the least bit Chinese. My hope is just to kind of lean towards a more simplistic theme, or let's say, I feel like my March and April themes got very full and there was lots of stuff on every page. And so I really want to kind of dial back and streamline it a little bit. And so I like the idea of just having a few elements on each page that will kind of tie this theme in together. I will also say one of my favorite authors is Lisa C., who writes books based in China. And so since that's the quote at the beginning of my reading journal, I just thought that would be kind of a cool thing to have a nod to in the journal as well. This is beautiful. I don't think I noticed that before, but I'm going to definitely think of something to do with this piece here. So in addition to this ephemera kit, and I will link it down in the description box below, I did find 3 dictionary cards, which I've been using in every theme so far. So the words I found were region and language and Eastern. And so the hope is these will find a place to settle in there. I also pulled out some different markers that are going to work. I'm going to lean into markers a little bit. So we have Tombow number 379, Tombow number 407, and Tombow number 856. And then this zebra mild liner, which my daughters went through and named everything for me. But they called this one Smoky Teal, and it's almost exactly the same color as like this here. And so it's like a bluish gray. It's really pretty. And then I went through all my washi tapes and pulled out anything that was kind of red orangey. And so I have this one here with these orange stripes on it. And my plan is to use these for the tabs going forward in the notebook, or for each page in the journal. So this one's really thin and hard to see, but it's got these little pluses on it. So I thought, just like as a nice accent piece, again, the idea is to try to keep it simple this time, not go overboard on each page, which I tend to do. Then there's this orangey polka dot, which you can tell the polka dots are not lined up well, so I'm going to have to figure out what I want to do about that. I will also say there is not a lot on a lot of these washi tape rolls, which means I might actually use up some washi tapes. Wouldn't that be something? There's this like smoky blue color here, and then this red-orange one with polka dots that I think will go very nicely. I also found a couple of really thin aqua washis in my stash. So we've got this one here. Let's see if I can find the end of this so that I can spread it out. I feel like I keep feeling it, and then I'm not sure where it is. Okay, well, I am sure I will figure that out eventually, but it's just got a little bit of a pattern there, so that could be nice. And then this one here, which I wasn't sure if I would like it, but I laid it against some of that orange colors, and it looks really nice. Wow, that is really not focusing in. All right, well, it is a striped aqua washi. And then finally, just to keep it from being too aqua and orange, red orange, I am going to pull in some of this grid, like a tan colored washi. And my thinking for this is, since there's so many pieces of pottery and vases and bowls and things like that, I want to use this as shelving or as little background accents. And I think that's going to come out really nice. And then just in case I need a brown that's a little bit thinner, I have this brown color. And this came in like a neutrals pack at Hobby Lobby, I think. So really the plan is to just stick with what you see here. So let's see how this goes. And yeah, let's dive in. All right, so speeding things up a little bit, because I am not exaggerating when I tell you that it took probably close to 4 hours working on this. Now, I will say I do take my time. I watch shows while I do this, and I enjoy a little downtime to myself. I took the day off of work today. I just have been feeling very overwhelmed, exhausted. My husband's been sick and not sleeping well, and that means I'm not sleeping well. And anyway, that's a lot to say why I speed things up. But anyway, I do take my time when I do this, so I just think, for the sake of just seeing how it all comes together, speeding it up helps a lot for that, I think. I dug through... Well, let me go back. So the first thing I did was I created that border with a Tombow marker in like a red-orange color. And I haven't done that on every other spread. My thought was that every monthly cover page would look similar to the other ones. But I mean, this is only month 5, and I'm already kind of getting bored doing the same thing all the time. So because I was aiming for a more simplistic vibe with this Chinese theme, I thought a nice clean border around the edge would be a new take on things. I still wanted to add some of that torn paper element, and some of the paper I'm using came from that little origami pack you saw there. And there was a paper in there that had like little fish and flowers, and I don't know, just something about it resonated with this vibe I was going for. So as always, I have already done all of my fussy cutting while I watched Survivor, An Amazing Race with my husband downstairs, and that helps me to be able to plan things out, which in truth then probably start to finish maybe 6 hours or more of planning all of this out. But again, I find the entire process extremely relaxing. I did start a self-care journal that my mom sent the kit from Archer and Olive, and sometimes I wonder what I'm going to put in that kit or in that notebook, because I do my self-care all the time. This is my form of self-care. And so taking my time and really thinking things through and just relaxing. I'm eating ice cream while I do this, or enjoying a Starbucks, or I'm texting friends at the same time. It's just, the whole thing is just very, very much self-care for me. So adding a couple of little hanging elements over here on the right side of the page, and that's going to do it for my May cover page. Oh yeah, except for coloring in the month name, of course. So moving on, now we are on my up next page, which these are the 5 books that I have chosen to read in the month of May. One of which is my reading challenge book, which I'll do a little bit more work for on the page beside this. I also decided I was going to read The Berry Pickers. A good friend in my Bible study group just finished it and said it was really great. I've been wanting to read it. I'm also going to read The Handmaid's Tale, The Other Woman, and my memoir this month is going to be Crying in H Mart, which I've heard good things about also. So as always, I try to make the titles on the spines look a little bit like the titles on the actual spines of the book. And just like on my cover page, I'm going to use this grid washi sort of as a shelf element, just to add a little extra color to these spreads. So adding those on there, and then just a few of those fussy cut elements to add some of those colors into this page. Once I am ready to update my May spreads at the end of May, I will color these books in with the same colors in the theme, so the books will stand out a little bit more themselves. You might also have noticed another change that I made in this month's reading journal spreads, and that is all of my, spread titles are going vertically up the side of the page as opposed to horizontally across the top or bottom. And again, just trying to find ways to mix it up a little bit, so still connected to all of the other themes that I've done, all the other months that are already in here, but I want each month to have its own little twist, something a little unique about it. So I thought that would kind of do the trick there. I also am kind of digging the double shelf look there. All right, so for my reading challenge in May, I am still sticking with the reading challenge on the STORYGRAPH app. And in the month of May, the prompt is to read a book with an author or by an author that shares a letter of my name. And I think the idea was first name matches first name, last name matches last name, something like that. I think I misread it because, of course, I immediately thought of Lisa C. My name is Susie, so I thought C, Susie, both start with S's. And I don't know, at some point I went back and read the actual prompt and I was like, oops, I think I misread that. So I'm going to just stick with Lisa C. I have a sort of just like a quiet goal, I guess you could say, of finishing all of her books this year. I don't know if I'll get through it or not, but I am going to give it a try. So I thought that would work really well. And the funny thing is, I did not think about this when I chose the Chinese theme for this month, but her books are always set in China. So it just kind of gave another nice nod to this. You might have noticed my first line where I'll write my thoughts about the book kind of went all the way to the edge of the page and a little bit onto the next page. So I just used a white gel pen to shorten that line back down a little bit. I tried covering it with a little bit of the bullet journal paper, and I don't know, it just got dirty and it was such a small piece, it was hard to do it cleanly, and the white gel pen just did the job. So I did have to let that dry a little bit as a tip before I turned the page so it wouldn't stick on everything else. For my new books acquired in May, I am going back to the same kind of chart that I used in January's peacock spreads. And that is just a very simple chart where my left column is going to be for the title of the book I acquire. The right hand column is for the author of the book. And then all the way in the left, you'll see me here. I'm numbering those rows. So that way I will hopefully stick to 10 or fewer books acquired in May. But again, it just seemed like it worked really well for a nice simplistic, clean line look that I was going for. On the right hand spread, I am going to record my top reads for May. I don't like to just highlight the best book of the month. I usually find that there are 3 or 4 books that I absolutely love, and it's just kind of a nice way to honor those books and make sure that I do remember the ones that stood out the most to me. I'm adding a little bit of that washi tape that I showed at the beginning of this video. This is that red-orange polka dot washi. My original thinking was that each spread would have washi running down the right-hand side, kind of like, I don't know, different striped tabs, if you will. As I was working, though, it just didn't seem necessary. But this coloring went really well with the theme, and I was going to stick with it. I'm kind of okay with that because if you remember in the beginning of the video, I talked about that orange polka dot washi and how it's not centered on the washi tape. So it was just kind of nice to not need to do that. All right, and pulling in some more elements that I had already previously fussy cut. I really loved all of the pottery in this kit. I just thought it was kind of cool. All these different, kind of like that stony gray or gray blue color, along with like the red tea kettle there. Obviously, tea is a big deal in China also. So just those little elements, I think, that kind of pull the theme together, pull those colors together. There's little berries on that blue pottery there, and I ended up with a little more space than I was anticipating. So I kept trying to play around with some other pieces from the kit to see what might fit in that space. And I kept looking at the berries on that blue piece of pottery there and finally found that piece also that had some of those on it as well. They're a little more of the orangey color, but I think it's going to work. It had a bowl of cut oranges next to it at the bottom. I didn't like the bowl of oranges. It just wasn't working for me. So I'm trying to find some ways to cover that little part of the ephemera. And in the end, I just decided another little blue bowl was going to work really well. And no regrets. I really wanted to be careful that it wasn't this perfect alternating of red, blue. So I love that there's more blue pottery on the page than there is red pottery, if you count the kettle as pottery, of course. And I love that the majority of the red is from those hanging lanterns. All right, so I just need to add a little string to the top of that lantern once I glue it down, of course. And that way it's not just floating around in the middle of nowhere. And again, a nice, clean, simple page, not too much going on. The next page I am just super excited about. I love to have some fun with my reading stats page each month. And I spent a lot of time trying to come up with a good idea I wanted to do something with the ephemera. I thought about doing hanging lanterns, but in April's spread, I did some hanging jars, and I didn't want to duplicate that idea. Even if it was with lanterns instead of jars, I really wanted something different. So I started Googling easy Chinese things to draw, and this dragon popped up. And I just thought, how cool would that be to have this dragon across the bottom of the page and then put my stats across the top of the page? So I previously sketched out the dragon, you might be able to tell on there. And I do freehand these things. I'm not good at drawing anything that's realistic. Truthfully, I can't draw anything realistic. But if there's any kind of cartoony element to it, I seem to be able to handle that. So I thought, let's get a dragon on the bottom here. It's definitely a well-known Chinese icon. And my student that I mentioned at the beginning of the video loved Chinese dragons. And so every time I see this, it's going to make me smile to think of him. So I'm kind of just roughly outlining what I'd already done in pencil. And you'll notice I'm kind of skipping around. I'm trying to give, sorry, there was something stuck in my tooth. I was trying to give other parts of that marker time to dry, or that pen. I'm using a micron, just so that I didn't accidentally smear it with my hand. And I find that the Pigma microns dry pretty quickly. I think they dry much more quickly than a Papermate Flare. I think I mentioned before, I learned my lesson. If you use the Papermate Flare, be aware that Tombow markers and mild liners, those kinds of things, the color will pull a little bit, and so you'll get darker colors. Whereas the micron doesn't seem to do that as much. There is a little bit of black pulled into the color from the micron, but it's not nearly as significant as with a Papermate Flare. So just adding some of those details to the dragon. The one I saw online that I fell in love with had a yellow belly. I didn't want to do that. I don't have any yellow at all in these spreads whatsoever. So I decided I was going to really focus on the red. And so I'm using that same red-orange Tombow marker. And then I come in with a Crayola Super Tip for the belly. And finally, instead of yellow spikes down its back, I went with that same smoky blue color, that mild liner. The bottom looked a little empty to me, so I decided I was going to bring in some of that aqua washi, just a really thin strip of that, and just something to kind of anchor the bottom of the page. It's not so much that he's walking on it, just so much as it is a little interesting detail at the bottom of the page. I'm cutting out any of the washi that's going over his toes. That way I can just kind of go in, peel that up, and now the washi is going behind his feet instead of over the top of them. The next thing I wanted to do is I still needed a place to put my stats. So in the process of Googling Chinese icons, I also remembered that Chinese fans are a big deal, or a big well-known icon. So I started out using different elements like that jar to try to get those curves right. And it just was kind of frustrating me. I've truthfully never been very good at tracing around objects like that. Even rulers give me trouble sometimes. I'm not sure what the deal is, but I definitely tried it for a bit. I don't know if I just struggled to hold things still, or I just see it differently in my head than I see it when I pull whatever I'm using to trace away. In any case, I start out doing a few of these with something to trace around, like a jar lid or the jar itself. And for the last few of them, I just sort of free-handed the fans. It just was getting too frustrating for me to find the right size and to try to make it work. And you can tell I struggle with where to put my hands, and I don't know how people do it so easily. It's not a big deal though. I mean, you're welcome to leave tips in the comments if you want, but I'm not, really bothered by it. I just seem to have an easier time freehanding things. So I went with about 3 different basic fan shapes. I completely forgot. I meant to give some of them more of like a zigzag vibe at the top. I just completely forgot that I was going to do that. So this one's going to have kind of like a scallop top to it. It's the only one that's going to have that vibe. And then I have 3 of them that are half circles, and then a couple that are more like, I don't know, quarter circles, if you will. Maybe not perfectly quarter circles, but anyway, the idea is that on each of these fans, I will write one of my stats for the month. So how many books I've read, how many pages I've read, how many books I acquired, did not finish, and how many are in print, digital, and audio. Now, you probably weren't keeping count, but that means that I need 7 spaces to record those stats. Those are the stats I record every single month. And at this point, you're probably noticing that I have only drawn 6 fans. And I'm still kind of laughing at this because when I did it in pencil, I made 7 fans. And somewhere along the way here, I must have made one a little too large and lost sight of my pencil lines, because this whole time I did not realize I had only made 6. And in a few minutes, you'll see that I sort of struggled with how to solve that problem, because I'm happy with the way everything is spaced out right now. And I definitely did not want to try to squeeze a 7th fan in there. But, these things happen, and it's just kind of the way it goes when you're journaling. Um, Mistakes are going to happen, and you just kind of have to find a way to make it work or start over. And after drawing that dragon and coloring it in, I was not starting over, that's for sure. So just erasing some of those pencil lines and then deciding to color these in the same reds and blues. And so one of the things I tried to be mindful of was the way I was coloring. I wanted the fan to kind of have, I don't know how to explain it, but I guess where the marker crosses over itself and darkens, I just wanted that to still follow like that vertical, whatever, fan outlook, almost like it would be crinkled if it was closed. I hope that makes sense. And then for these 2 fans, I decided to color them exactly the same way with the Crayola S Note, which is that color you see there. That's the color I used on the belly of the dragon. And then I used the Tombow marker over that to just add some of those lines. I guess they're fold lines that you would see on a paper fan. And again, really it's just to give it a little bit of a, I don't know, I don't think it looks super realistic, I guess, but just to kind of make it a little more fun and interesting. I do love to color, I love to draw, I love to doodle, and I don't really do a lot of drawing or doodling, so sometimes this is a really fun outlet. For the scalloped fan in the middle, I use that Tombow for the bottom where you hold the fan, and then I'm using that mild liner in that smoky blue or smoky teal color, and that's going to help bring some of that blue color into this whole layout so that it doesn't end up being too red. Now, obviously, I have finished all of this now since I'm recording, and it is kind of funny. You'll see at the end where, compared to all of the other spreads, this spread came out very red. And I love the spread. I have no problems with that, but it's almost kind of comical. I think part of what did that also, is there are no fussy cut elements at all on this page. This page is just marker. So you lose some of that shading and some of the color variations that would be in a paper printed ephemera kit. And just trying to make that fan look a little more interesting, adding some folding stripes to that as well, or folding lines. I did learn a trick from Mark from Mark Your Pages, and that is if you ever need to draw a line with a ruler, usually rulers have that one side where they're super flat and flush with your surface. And then if you flip it over the other way, they kind of can teeter or teeter-totter. So if the ruler is upside down, I guess meaning the numbers are down on the table. I hope that's making sense. Anyway, if you do it that way so that there's that little bit of gap and it's not completely flush with your work surface, then when you draw lines or make straight lines with a marker, because it's not flush, it's not going to catch any of the marker and drag and create any of that those drag marks from that. And I am so grateful for that tip. It's kind of funny because I spend a lot of my time when I teach my students using rulers. I'm always telling them, no, it's upside down, turn it to the flat side. And it never ever occurred to me that there could be a purpose for the ruler not being flush and perfectly flat on both sides. So that is probably one of my all-time favorite tips now, is to just use that side so you don't get any of that smearing from using a ruler. And I only mention that in case you were wondering how my lines are nice and straight without. So if you look closely, you can see my ruler is actually upside down, but now there's nothing to drag on the page. So, and there are my fans above my dragon. And now it's time to label them. So there I was double checking again to make sure I had enough. I still counted wrong, but I'm just going through now and labeling the fans. That way that part is already done. So this one is going to be for pages read. So I'm just labeling that on there, and then I'll just write the number of pages that I read in May somewhere on that fan. All right, so this is about the moment when I realized, where did I go wrong? Because I still need a fan for new books acquired and a fan for print books that I read. And I must have stared at this for a good 10 minutes, guys. I was like, what am I going to do? I thought about drawing a fan in the very middle at the bottom and realized that would be a bad idea with the crease in the page. In the end, I just decided to add new books to the pages read, and I just decided, you know what, that fan's going to have to be big enough for the both of them, and we'll make it work. And that way over on this side, I can add my print books. So not ideal, definitely not what I had intended, but I think in the end, it's going to be fine. So there's my stats page. And all that's left now is my books read page, where I will print and glue down all the covers of the books that I read in May. So I'm going to go back to that torn page element that was on the cover of my May spreads, and that is that orange paper with the aqua paper and then that fishy origami paper. I did need to double up on that origami paper, and thankfully the left side lined up with the right side, if that makes sense. So it does end up looking seamless. I wasn't going to worry about that, but it turned out to work out well. Adding a little bit of washi at the bottom. I'm planning to put some pottery on this page as well, and I didn't want it to just be floating around. So this kind of anchors it and holds it down to the bottom of the page. And I did decide to use those flowers that I saw when I was showing the ephemera at the beginning of the video, but I didn't like the jar that they were in. So instead, I cut out a different jar, cut out the plant, and then just stuck them in a different jar. And that's just a little encouragement. If you do decide to purchase an ephemera kit or a fussy cut kit, it's yours to cut up however you want. That designer wants you to enjoy their kit. And so have fun with it. Mix and match things up. Create something out of what they've already created. And that's a lot of the fun of it, is making sure that it fits your needs. I probably should have trimmed those off layer by layer so it wouldn't have taken quite so long, but in the end it worked out. And now we're just adding a little bit of that ephemera to the right hand side. And my last little dictionary phrase, which is region. Not really a phrase, more like a word. And you'll see me rubbing glue off all the time. It's kind of satisfying, actually. The Elmer's glue stick works really well. That's pretty much all I use. I use the purple so I can see where there might be glue somewhere. But I've been asked that a couple times, and it really does work well. Things stay stuck down pretty quickly and pretty well. So all that's left now is to label this page with books read. So sometimes you'll see me flipping back to other spreads to make sure I'm staying consistent, and going back with my micron, which is also great if you need to be able to erase right away without any smearing. Okay, so let's take a look at all of the final pages for May. This is my cover page for May. Then on the next page, we have the 5 books that I'm hoping to read in the month of May, including my reading challenge book, Snowflower and the Secret Fan. The cover for that book will go here. The prompt is to read a book with an author that has the same letter as my name, and so I went with a book by Lisa C., whom I love, and since her last name starts with the first letter S, like Susie, that's going to be my choice for here. On the next page, this is just to record any new books I acquire. Hopefully it's not more than 10. Hopefully it's much less than 10. And then these boxes are for the covers of the 3 top reads for the month of May. I didn't leave myself a lot of room to put the stars, but I'll figure that out when I need to. On this page is where I'm going to record my stats for the month, and it is a little bright. I added a little strip of orange and white striped washi at the bottom. Doesn't really tone it down that much, but whatever, it was worth a try. So I'll record how many pages I read, how many new books I acquired, how many books I read that were audio, digital, or print, and then how many books I did not finish and how many total books I read for the month. And then on the last page, this is where I will put the books that I read. All the covers of the books that I read in May will go here. And that's all I've got for the month of May. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I hope you enjoyed the video. Have a wonderful day. Bye.